It's probably worth saying at the outset that some of what Barack Obama said in Roanoke was taken out of context and is being used to make points that he himself was not really intending to make. And you take, actually, ignoring the part that was taken out of context, you take on another portion, which is President Obama says, the point is that when we succeed because of our individual initiative, but also because we do things together. There are some things, like fighting fires, we don't do on our own. I mean, imagine if everybody had their own fire service. That would be a hard way to organize fighting fires.
Right. He's correct that we accomplish most good things by working together. I mean, all he's describing in that first bit is division of labor and trade. We don't all do things individually. We work together and we pool our resources and we specialize in what we're good at and we sell that to other people, or we voluntarily help each other. So he's absolutely correct there. He's not correct in the characterization of the fire departments, though. I mean, if that were true, if his argument about the fire departments were true, then everything that wasn't done by government, which is what he means by working together, would be done totally individually. So if government doesn't run bookstores, then each of us would have to run our own bookstores and our own printing presses and our own publishing businesses. That's clearly not how it works. We do those things together, and we do them without giving money to the federal government.
You describe what President Obama said here as the Elizabeth Warren moment, the president's Elizabeth Warren moment. Remind us of what she had said previously, and why does the president, why is this an Elizabeth Warren moment?
Elizabeth Warren, a Senate candidate in a campaign stop some time ago, had said fairly close to word for word these same things.
There is nobody in this country who got rich on his own. Nobody. You built a factory out there, good for you, but I want to be clear, you moved your goods to market on the roads the rest of us paid for.
She said it's great that all of you who started a factory, that's great. If you've gotten wealthy, that's great, but you didn't do it without the help of the government. The government provided the infrastructure, it provided the education for your employees, it provided the legal system that makes it all possible, and so you need to give a whole lot back. And her remarks were extremely popular among people who also support the president, and so it's clear that he's just lifting a page from her playbook here.
They both seem to be presenting a choice between the government we have now and no government whatsoever. That is to say, without government, we wouldn't have roads, we wouldn't have education, we wouldn't have these things, and we wouldn't have fire services, and therefore it seems to justify the government we have now.
Right, which is a little bit weird because the government that they're describing, the one that presumably helps us all accomplish everything we've accomplished, is a much, much smaller government than the one that we've got and the one that they would like us to increase taxes to pay for. I mean, we're not in a huge budget crunch because we're spending money on roads or because we're spending money on police forces or courts. It's all of these other things that arguably do not contribute to healthy businesses or wealthy individuals or even just the betterment of most of us in our day-to-day lives that we need to find a way to pay for or cut. So the vision that they have seems to be awfully libertarian if we take it at just the things that they describe, but that's not where they want to see government end up.
And the things that they're actually describing, fire services, education, roads, there's very little role for the federal government there at all.
Sure, those are all chiefly state. There's some subsidies and whatnot from the federal government, but those are state programs, yes.
In politics, there's a lot of us versus them. And as you've pointed out on different occasions in blog posts and elsewhere, there's a typically progressive view of what us and them looks like and a typically libertarian view of what us and them looks like.
Yes, so when the president talks about doing something together, he doesn't mean it in the way that I think most of us imagine it. When most of us say, let's do this together, we think about friends coming together and working on a project. We think about a family organizing to do something. We think about community or a church group helping each other out or forming a company, going into business. What he means by doing it together is giving our money to the government and having the government do it for us. And I think that does speak to this different sense of us versus them. I think for people like the president, us means the government. It only makes sense within the context of the government. For libertarians, or people who are generally more in favor of the free market, us is the market.
President Obama here again. There are some things we do better together. That's how we funded the GI Bill. That's how we created the middle class. That's how we built the Golden Gate Bridge or the Hoover Dam. That's how we invented the internet. That's how we sent a man to the moon. He's referring to large-scale, in many cases, government projects.
Yes, and he also seems to be assuming that if it weren't for large-scale government projects taking large amounts of our money and putting them towards those things, we wouldn't have those things at all. He's assuming that these things wouldn't happen in the absence of the state. So when he says we have to work together on this, the only way that can happen is if the government does it, because otherwise we'd be back to everyone having their own fire station, their own police department.
If we take a lot of what Elizabeth Warren says and what President Obama says in these two sort of narrow and perhaps not totally representative statements that they've made, what's the role for civil society?
The role for civil society seems to be to just pay government and have government take over everything. It seems to be, it's a view of the American people that says we are incapable of bettering ourselves, of working together, of contributing to our communities, of enriching each other without all of that somehow flowing through the federal government first. It's an impoverished view of cooperation. It's an impoverished view of what us means, of what community means. And it's a view that doesn't put a lot of faith in the American people and their ability to improve their lot.